Okay, I'm now talking with John Woodford. All right, John, let me ask you, do you know how we are related?
Yep, I know.
And how is that?
Donna Jean is my dad's cousin.
Okay.
And Donna Jean is your aunt.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So we're cousins, we just say as cousins.
Hey, let me ask you a question. What is it that you do right now?
Right now I'm an executive editor of Michigan Today. It's an alumni publication of the University of Michigan.
You know, how many years have you been writing, to get that type of a position?
Since 1965.
And you're about how old then?
Oh, let's see, I was 24.
Have you always had a kind of a desire to want to write?
Not really. No, kind of just stumbled into it. I just sort of wanted to do something fairly interesting. I've been going to graduate school in Chicago and I didn't like it. And then I heard that Ebony and Jet were hiring. So I wasn't really thinking about, I hadn't done much about it before, but that sounded a lot more interesting than going to grad school at the time. And I went there and you sort of train on the job.
How did you, since you didn't have much of a background in it,
yeah,
how did you get into it and then excel?
Well, I had been in English literature, so I guess you could say I was interested in writing, not necessarily writing myself, but I was interested in the process of reading good writing, and so I think that helped a lot, being in literature. And other than that, I think the thing about being in literature is you have you put some value on the quality of the things you're reading. So if you get into a position where you have to write stuff for other people, you want to give them, you want to give them some kind of good experience for what they're reading. And I think that kind of drives you is to give them, when you read, you want to get a lot of information. You want to get sort of, gee whiz, I didn't know that. And you want clarity and a certain style that's interesting for people to read. So I think it was sort of, I came at it more that way than wanting to, and then of course, when I started, you had the civil rights movement that had been, the phase of the civil rights movement of the late 50s was building up, cresting, and you had the anti-Vietnam War movement and anti-nuclear weapons movement. You had a lot of things going on in society that you wanted to tell people about because they weren't getting it through much of the regular news media. And so that kind of drew me to news media that wasn't mainstream.
As you started doing this, did you ever go through periods where you wanted to quit writing and go to some other profession?
Yes, let's see. Well, the first one I started, after a while, then I thought, well, maybe I went back to graduate school in English literature, and I got a master's. Then I thought, well, I didn't really feel like being a professor shut up in a university. Then I went to law school. This was after my first stint at Ebony and Jet. And then I went to law school for a year. I didn't like that because the stuff you read was boring, and there was something about the profession I didn't like that much myself. So then Ebony and Jet, then I got a job at the New Haven newspaper, and I liked newspapering. That was my first daily newspaper job. And then I went from there. Ebony and Jet needed people, and they contacted me and say, hey, how about coming back? So then I moved back to Ebony and Jet in '68. And then I moved over to Muhammad Speaks after that because Ebony and Jet they were censoring a lot of activists, more radical kind of politics. They weren't covering it.
Did you ever have the opportunity to meet Elijah Muhammad?
Oh yeah, regularly. I saw him a number of times.
What can you tell me about him? What was he like, as a person one-on-one?
He was a person who was filled with a lot of mother wit and common sense, sort of self-educated person, but had a lot of insight and a lot of personal power to organize, a sense of organization of people, and had a vision, whether it was some of it was cockeyed, some of it wasn't. I guess he knew how to organize people, and part of the organizing people that he was dealing with, ex-prisoners or prisoners, he had a sense of countering the establishment, religion, and politics for black people with an anti, a lot of eat pork, don't eat pork. They wear mini skirts, don't wear mini skirts. They do this, Christians, be Muslims. It was sort of the yank people out of the familiar and usual of American culture. That was his approach. And it worked for a lot of people.
As you seen him, as you saw guys like Elijah Muhammad be in prominence, and you saw how he may have helped other people, what is your take on the American dream today? I mean, if a person really wants to work hard at something, do you feel that they can, through their own initiative, achieve generally what they want?
Well, whether they can achieve exactly what they want, I think they can do quite a bit nowadays, a lot more than before, but they have to have a good foundation of training. You can't just go out there. People have to study, read, learn, challenge themselves. You can't just accept the educational system or political system that is plopped out there and be sort of a passive, uncritical consumer and buyer into it, or think that because you went through school that means you learned something, because the schools are pretty dreadful across the board in this country. School educational system is very poor. That means people and their families, they have to seize the initiative to train themselves, educate themselves, figure out how to learn what the people with a lot of clout in society, you want to know what they know. You want to be able to deal with them. You want to be able to talk with them. You want to know at least as much, and you want to be able to know more, really. You should try to know more, because the establishment people have their line. You want to be able to critique that, especially if you're a member of people who are discriminated against. You're going to have to work harder. And I think one problem, our people need to get more into the habit of reading, studying, analyzing things more on their own. Don't just accept stuff that comes through automatically. And I think our people are, the school systems are so bad, and one reason is that there are a lot of people who don't care how much black people learn. And the less they learn, the better, as far as they're concerned. So you have all this stuff with just, dancing, buying records, consuming, not doing anything, not producing anything. This is sort of a rut we're in this country.
Well, I've seen a lot of black people have their own attitude about themselves.
Have that attitude?
Yes.
Yeah, nothing's better than to keep someone under control is to have them adopt a negative attitude about themselves. You got 3/4 of the battle done right there. And you're right. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people think that to be black means to be stupid, basically. And so black people you see in the schools, where the black kids who might want to go study hard will be put down. And there's nothing in the community or system to kind of support a lot of the kids who are good students. And the kid who's doing in basketball and scoring so far so low down on the SAT that you could almost fill it out at random and get the same score, these guys are getting a free ride to college. But the community is not stepping in and valorizing these kids who are trying to work. It makes it very hard for them. It's very hard for some of the kids to come out of that system and be told, well, you're reading books, you're going to the library, that means you're white. As soon as someone thinks something like that, and they define white as excelling in reading or any other kind of intellectual academic endeavor, well, you know, that's a very bad situation for an ethnic group to be in.
You know, we must talk again at another time, but one last question I do want to ask you, you know, what particular relevance do you see in the folks coming together like this, and for the folks who are not here, what have they missed?
The family members who aren't here, well, if they haven't been before, then it's comforting to know that you can go to a certain part of the country, your forebears have been there, they've done things, they've worked. You don't know the kinds of achievements. It doesn't have to be grandiose achievement. We do have some very outstanding people in certain fields, but people who just, some of the people who've worked in the local factory for 20, 30 years too, and done disciplined work there and come out and retired, had a home and family, and just be solid, regular solid people. It's very good for people to be connected with regular solid people who have common sense and value bringing children up, nurturing children, that sort of thing. So I think that's the main thing you see. You see all these generations, and they get along well, and it's something you'd like to see more of. I mean, there are many families that, for some reason or another, maybe not be this fortunate. I mean, it's you know, most of the people here aren't in dire poverty. They may not be rich, but there are a lot of families where people have generations of people in poverty where maybe no one's been going to college for a while, something of that sort. And that's very difficult. It makes it difficult for the children to have people to look at and talk to who might tell them, you know, stick in there, you're a good kid. Children need positive. That's the main thing. You want to see happy, cheerful children. And whatever it takes to have a lot of happy, cheerful children, whatever does that is, you know, is something good. And, you know, you may have seen a lot of families where the children are unhappy, there's a lot of strife. Maybe the children are being slapped upside the head all the time and they're ducking and they don't feel good about themselves. Now, speaking of excellent parent and teacher, you need to get this person because she's a genius.
Okay. Thank you very much, John.
Yeah, okay.
Just right here.